Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. And today I'm going to be talking about Dune Part 2. Now, I haven't made any parts for like Part 1, so I won't go into a lot of detail on the story because I will kind of revisit it on a separate video. But Dune 2, wow. Um, to make this very short, I'll just say it was great. It was fantastic seeing it on the big screen. It was amazing. I mean, the visuals, the background music, it was just wow. It was impressive. Um, if you haven't seen the first one, you might be a little bit lost about what Dune actually is. So just kind of like a very quick background. Um, Before there was Star Wars, before there was Star Trek, before there was a lot of these like space fantasies, there was an author named Frank Herbert who wrote a book series. And one of the books in that series was Dune. Other books in the series include like House of Atreides, House of Harkonnen, House of it's quite a lot, right? It's a lot of books, but in the series, it is kind of like the basis on which Star Wars was made, on which Star Trek was made. Even in the most recent Netflix movie, Rebel Moon, you can see quite a bit of that influence from Dune if you've ever read the books. Now, there's also a movie that was made. There was like a series that was made for TV. There was also like a movie made in the 90s. And if you kind of do a comparison, there are going to be differences, but they're pretty much very similar. Uh, if I had to explain myself, like in the first movie, there is a part where the main character, Paul Atreides, he is the heir to like the whole Atreides empire or kingdom or planet. Anyway, so he's kind of like the heir to rule that his people. When this attempt of a coup to murder the entire family happens, his father dies, but his mother and himself escape while they were all kind of supervising the works in this planet called Dune, and they actually have like a different name for it. But the reason why it's called Dune is because it's very much a desert planet where there's a lot of sand dunes, there's a lot of sandstorms, and a lot of dangers, and a severe lack of water, severe lack of water. And so, in one of the parts, Paul Atreides has to kind of be accepted by this group of people that have survived in this planet for so long. And the way he does this is that he enters into combat, where one of the members kind of challenges him and says, "You know what? You have to die, and we can't agree. So, what we're going to do with you? So, I'm going to fight you." He accepts the challenge. He wins, and that was in that part one of, you know, of this two-part movies. However, in the old movie, nothing to do with the actors from this film, they don't show that part. But also on the old movie, they have this weapon which uses the voice, where it's has an attachment to the throat, and then it's a cable that runs to this gun, and they use this. Then they use their voice to kind of power the gun and shoot. Well, in the part one and part two movies of Dune, the new movies, they don't have that. So it is kind of different how that works. Uh, it's not a bad change. It's just something to note that, compared to like the old movie and the books, there are going to be slight differences, but it's pretty much faithful to the original source material. Now, I will also add that Paul Atreides is very much depicted a lot differently. And to kind of explain that, in the old movie. It's been a long time since I've read the book, but in the old movie, he is portrayed as okay. He's very calculating. He knows what's going on. He knows what he has to do. Once that thing happens with his father, it's his choice of okay, should I do this? Should I challenge House Harkonnen or not? Should I lead these people as I saw in my dreams? And well, he does step up to a challenge. He does say, you know what, we're going to do this. Whereas in the new movies, and this is why I'm mentioning it because even though I'm just talking about part two, is because Paul in the new movies, he's very much hesitant. Like he has the visions, he has the same dreams, but he has to think about okay, I don't want to do this, but what do I need to do? So he has been kind of like forced to take up the mantle of leadership and just ride along, but he steps back as much as possible. So even though during the whole, you know, expeditions that they go into and everything they go through together, along with the people on planet Arrakis, which is the official name for Dune, he begins getting a name for himself, and word of him spreads throughout the planet. But it's not like he's actually taking leadership. It's just people that are recognizing him and saying, "Okay, we're waiting for him to step up and be the leader." And he very much hesitates, and he really says, "You know, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want there to be this holy war. I want to avoid it. I want to avoid it." And he hesitates and he postpones what has to be done, which is going to the southern hemisphere of the planet, where it's very, very, you know, not very hospitable. It's, you know, not good if you're living. But in the old movie, he does kind of take it for granted, like, yes, you know, this is what I have to do, and I'm just going to do it. So he doesn't hesitate that much. It is a difference, but I don't think it really affects the movie in as much as, you know, you're really still going to enjoy it. You're still going to understand what's going on. Granted, you still have to see part one to understand what's going on, but you know, pretty much, it's not going to affect it. Like if you like the old movie, you'll probably still like the new one as long as you can stand sitting down for hours and hours. Because I believe this movie was, we have to look at it, but I do think it was more than 2.5 hours. It might have been, let's see, I have to do like a quick search. So one moment. So part two was 2 hours for 46 minutes. It is quite long. And the part one was also very long. It was also over 2.5 hours. So it is one of those things where if you want to watch it, it's best to watch it back to back. But realistically, you might have to see it in parts because, well, and I say in parts because part one is on Netflix, or at least it was at one point. I think they already took it out of Netflix, but most likely part two will also be streamed at some point. And so realistically, nobody's going to be sitting down for so long, but it is going to be a movie that you will enjoy with other people, as long as they like that type of genre of movies. So it is highly enjoyable. It's very enjoyable, especially if you have like, you know, not the sound bars, but like actual speakers, or you have like a good pair of headphones. I'm not talking about like, oh, the Sennheisers, you know, like the Sony XM5s or like the AirPod Max, or no, I'm just talking about like if you have a good pair of headphones that are for sound, you'll probably get that kick when that bass drops from the sounds that are made from like the explosions to the movement of the worm. Oh, that was the other thing. The one part I was hoping that it was going to be here Actually, two parts. The two parts that were here that I was expecting, there were in the movie. So that was awesome. The first one is when these massive creatures that are the sandworms, these are the worms that when they're in the desert, they have to be careful of not walking in a different pattern. So they do have to like do these weird. It kind of looks like a dance where they have to like one step, one long step, and then like they arc their leg, and it's quite a bit what they have to do to make it seem more natural, you could say, because the sandworms will detect that vibration and they'll go and attack. But the people on planet Arrakis, they actually ride sandworms, and so one of the initiations or like one of these rituals of passage for Paul Atreides is that he has to ride a sandworm. And the thing about Paul Atreides is that, and that's part like of prophecy, but again, I'll address that on a separate video, is that he summons like the biggest of the biggest sandworms, and he's able to ride it, and it's just so amazing. Like the old movie was amazing. Part two, it was also amazing to see, how he's struggling to climb up and how all that sand from the worm moving is blasting him in the face, and how the worm is just going forward, and how he has to kind of use his weight to kind of he uses these hooks not just to hang on to but also to steer the worm. And so just seeing how he has to like bend his body, go low, and then to use that force to actually move the worm left or right, that was amazing. That was amazing, and I'm glad they did include it. There's also like a fight in the end. I'm not gonna spoil it, so I'll just say that I was hoping for that fight. It is very different from the old movie because in the old movie, he Paul does something that is not supposed to happen. Um, like I mentioned in the old movie, they do have these guns and it's very specific for the Atreides army. They have these guns that they use their voices to kind of shoot. And it's not that they go shoot and then shoots, but it's more like they do like this guttural sound. They go "Roo, roo." Okay, that sounds more like a racing car, but you get the idea. They use like these vibrations from the throat, but they need to use this device that attaches to the throat in order to activate the gun and shoot. But in the old movie, there's this final fight, and Paul ends up being able to do this without a gun, without a weapon. Like he only uses his voice to do that, and he finally defeats whoever he was fighting. And it wasn't like that's how he won the fight. It was more like he had won the fight, but the other person didn't want to give up. So in like an attempt to kind of do like the final the final hit, you could say, that's when he does it. And that's quite the scene to see, because that's when everybody realizes that, oh, Paul Atreides is not just a guy who incited a rebellion. He is actually way more than that. In the part two, they do have that final fight, but it really seems more, it brings Paul more down to earth, that no, he's just another human who can bleed and who can also die. He doesn't die, but I'm just saying that. It's not, they don't recognize him as, oh, he's like this being that's way above us. No, they actually just see him as, oh, okay, he's a threat, but yeah, there's nothing we can do. And, I do have like several more thoughts, but I don't want to make this too long. In the end of Dune Part 2, even though it's not a faithful recreation of the old movie, which the old movie, again, it was in the 90s, and they made it long, but it also wasn't as long as, the two parts that we got for Dune. of the new movies. It's not a bad thing. It's just something to consider. Like if you like the old movie and expect the same thing, it's not going to be the same thing. But you're also shouldn't expect it to be the same thing. As long as you're not expecting it to be a rehash of the old movie from the 90s, you will see that it is still staying close to the original material, which is the Book of Dune from Frank Hubert, and you won't be disappointed. It is a great film. The visuals, fantastic. The sounds, the music, impressive. The acting, great. I mean, they even have like a few scenes where I was laughing, and I think that the people behind me were also laughing at those scenes. But it was a good time. It is long, but as long as you're there for the film and enjoying you won't feel it. You actually won't feel the time pass that quickly. I mean, for me, it did feel like a 2 hour film, but it did not feel like a 2 hour 46 minute film. It really didn't. It felt shorter than it was, and it was still fantastic. So great, so great. You know, what's his name? Timothy, Zendaya, Josh Brolin, all these actors, they were great. It was quite the acting. If I did have like a complaint, does more on, it's not going to be Bautista himself, or I forget his name. He also was in a recent movie that was just released about Elvis Presley. Well, that character, that actor, those two actors. It's not that it was their fault. I feel that the way that their characters were written for this film was what did them wrong. What I mean by this is that in the book and in the old movie, the two nephews in the house of Harkonnen, they are psychopaths. They are psychopaths in the sense that they will kill just for the fun of it. They will not regret anything. They will use and abuse their power in any way they can, and nothing can stop them. Bautista, he kind of started the right way in the part one, but in part two, he seemed more. How can you describe it? More defeated, like more like he was doing what he had to do, what was asked of him to be done, but he really wasn't enjoying himself. It was more of, he knew he is in big trouble, and that he's in a way too deep a hole to dug out of. So he pretty much, yeah, you could see like that he was already dead inside. It wasn't that psychopath that you knew from the original source materials. And the other Harkonnen nephew, the one who plays Elvis in one of the new movies that was just released, he is much more of a psychopath, in which, because he's much more, I guess you could say, much more beautiful, I guess, more handsome, he uses that as, hey, look at me, right? And he also seeks a lot of his own physical pleasure. Although he does also get a lot of satisfaction from making people suffer. And that thing was that in this film, they made him out to be like this broken boy who has issues and has done things like kill his mother when he was a child, and that he might have like mother issues with older women. But I don't know, they just made him out to be like he's just some boy with issues, whereas originally he is bad. I mean, Frey Harkonnen, he is bad to the bone and probably the worst of the two Harkonnen nephews. So that's why, if I had a complaint, it would be just how those two characters were written. It still ends up being like the same results, but it's kind of, it's different. It's different. Yeah, I mean, yeah, don't know what to think. Yeah, that's pretty much what I think about it. Oh, that is also to say, if you want it like for proof of how deep this goes and how much it inspires other space fantasies, you do have the struggle for power, and you do have that still power struggle, not just between the largest of the families, but also with the Tesseract. I wouldn't say cults, but like the religion with like the mothers and all that. Like there's still that power struggle between the actual powers, political powers, but also as the religion who has a grasp on the politics, and that's also trying to manipulate and not being front and center, but still being the puppeteers that are masterminding the whole, uh, who is going to end up being emperor and who's going to end up going away and who's a threat for rebelling, that type of thing. It's still there. Fantastic to see. And again, if you do come in watching part one and watching part two, you will enjoy, as long as as long as this like the type of genre that you like watching. If you just want like a quick action movie type of thing, where it's, shoot, 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 everybody dies, the good guys win. It's not going to be that. It's different. It's going to be way different than that. Well, I can keep on rambling, but I'm going to stop right there. In the end, it is a good movie. I will recommend it. And the action was great. I mean, the writing could have been a little bit better for the two characters I already mentioned. But still, I mean, even the differences didn't really compromise the movie at all. At all. That'll be it for me. That'll be it for now. If you've seen part one or part two, what did you think? Are you going to see part two if you haven't seen it? I don't know. Let me know. Leave something in the comments. At any rate, I'll see you when I see you. And remember, always remember, be kind to one another. Be kind to those around you. Because you never know what they're going through. You really don't. Alright. Bye-bye.